Today, we are diving into one of the most legendary financial meltdowns in history, the Great Stock Market Crash of 1929. Seriously, it's an incredible story of dizzying highs, absolutely devastating lows, and some hard-learned lessons that still ring true almost 100 years later. So let's get into it. Can you just imagine that sound? That was the sound of a world ending. It's the morning of October 24th, 1929, a day we now call Black Thursday. On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, you've got men in fancy suits just screaming in total panic. You know, for a decade, those little ticker tape machines had been printing nothing but good news. But now they were spitting out a story of pure, unadulterated disaster. This wasn't just a bad day on the market. This was the moment the biggest party in American history came to a sudden, violent stop. So you have to ask the big question, right? How did an entire nation so utterly convinced that it was on a permanent path to prosperity suddenly find itself on the edge of ruin? Basically, overnight. Well, to really understand the crash, first, we have to understand the party. Let's start right at the climax, in the middle of the chaos, those frantic last days when the music finally, and for good, just stopped. But to make any sense of that chaos, we've got to rewind. We have to go all the way back to the beginning of the Roaring Twenties. Because this was a time when the stock market wasn't just some stuffy game for the super rich. No, it had become America's new favorite pastime. I mean, the stories from that era are just wild. The famous financier Joseph Kennedy, he supposedly sold every stock he owned right after getting a stock tip from a Shoeshine boy. His thinking was, if everyone is in on the game, it's probably time to get out. And you know what? He was right. From taxi drivers to cooks, it seems like everybody had a brokerage account. This was a huge shift. High-stakes finance was being sold to the public like a brand new car, except with absolutely no instruction manual. So let's just picture a typical family from that time. We can call them the Millers. They took their entire life savings, $2,000, and they put it all into the stock market. Now, $2,000 might not sound like a ton of money today, but in 1929, that was more than the average family made in a whole year. This was their ticket, their shot at the American dream. And of course, they were told about this magic trick that could make them rich even faster. It was called buying on margin. This was the unregulated, high-octane fuel that powered the whole 1920s boom. It basically let you control a massive amount of stock with very, very little of your own money down. Here's how it worked. Let's say you wanted $100,000 worth of stock. Well, you only had to put down maybe $10,000 of your own cash. Your broker would just lend you the other 90 grand. If the stock went up, hey, you're a genius, you're making a fortune. But if it fell, even just a little bit, you'd get the dreaded margin call. That's a demand for more cash, and you had to pay it right now. If you couldn't, your broker sold your stock, you were totally wiped out, and you still owed them money. It was the ultimate financial high-wire act with no safety net. So the music at the party was blaring, it was loud, but if you were listening really, really carefully, you could start to hear the foundations of the whole building shake. Long before the actual crash, there were some pretty clear warning signs that this whole celebration was getting dangerously out of control. You had a few voices in the wilderness, like the economist Roger Babson. In September of 29, he warned everyone that a terrific crash was coming. And what happened? He was basically laughed out of the room. Instead, people were listening to famous economists like Irving Fisher, who just literally days before the collapse, made the now infamous statement that stocks had reached a permanently high plateau. It was the ultimate case of, this time is different. But Babson's fears weren't just coming from nowhere. They were grounded in reality. While the stock market was shooting for the moon, the actual economy, the one with real jobs and real products, was slowing down. Steel production was down, construction was sluggish, car sales were dropping. The market had become this beautiful, shimmering bubble that was completely disconnected from the ground beneath it. The foundation was already cracked. Okay, so the foundation is weak, all the warnings have been ignored, the stage is set. Let's get back to those final, frantic days and watch this whole thing come crashing down. The end didn't happen all at once. It came in waves. It started with that first jolt of panic on Black Thursday. Then there was this brief, really false sense of calm over the weekend as the big bankers tried to patch things up. But by Monday, the dam just completely broke. The market plunged. And then came Tuesday, the final knockout blow. So on that Thursday, Wall Street's most powerful bankers basically sent in a ringer. Richard Whitney, the vice president of the stock exchange. He dramatically strode onto the trading floor and, in this loud, confident voice, started buying up shares of U.S. Steel at prices way above what they were trading for. It was pure theater, a performance designed to signal to everyone that the big money was here and they were going to save the day. And for a hot second, it actually worked. The panic died down, and one banker confidently told the press, "We have seen the worst." But it was all a bluff. They had basically tried to stop a tsunami with a beach bucket. Over the weekend, millions of regular investors on margin did the math and realized they were still completely wiped out. The terror came rushing back. When the market opened on Tuesday, October 29th, the floodgates just burst open. A record-shattering 16.4 million shares got traded, as literally everyone tried to sell all at once. There was no hero coming to the rescue this time. It was just pure, raw panic. On that one single day, Black Tuesday, $14 billion of wealth just evaporated. Poof, gone. To put that in perspective, that was more than the entire U.S. federal budget at the time. All the fortunes that had been built on nothing but confidence just vanished the second that confidence was gone. And for our family, the Millers, everything they had was gone too. The party was officially over. So after the storm finally passed and the dust began to settle, a whole nation was left standing in the ruins. The big questions were, why did this happen? And what on earth could be learned from the ashes of the greatest financial party in history? It really wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm. You had a culture of what we'd now call irrational exuberance, this widespread belief that the old rules just didn't apply anymore. You had a deeply flawed financial system with basically no guardrails. And you put a powerful, really dangerous new tool, margin debt, into the hands of millions of people who had no idea how risky it was. But here's the thing. The stock market crash itself was only the beginning. The real catastrophe that followed was the complete crisis of faith in the entire banking system. People panicked and rushed to pull their cash out of the banks, causing these massive bank runs. In 1930 alone, over 1,300 banks just collapsed. And back then, there was no FDIC, no deposit insurance. If your bank failed, your life savings were just gone, forever. But that incredible trauma, it forced massive change. The spectacular failure of the old system made the modern reforms we have today totally inevitable. We got the SEC to act as a cop on the beat for the markets, and we got the FDIC to ensure our savings in the bank. You could say the crash was this violent, painful rite of passage that had to destroy an old, outdated financial system to make way for the regulated one we live with today. It's so easy for us to look back at them and think, how could they be so foolish? But you have to remember, they were living in a time of unbelievable change that felt brand new and totally limitless. They really truly believed they had found a permanent path to prosperity. So as we live in our own world with our own dizzying technologies and promises of endless growth, it's probably worth asking ourselves, are we so sure our party will never end?
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.